And so I ended up staying with another Jehovah's Witness brother under the name of Joseph. And Brother Charles worked that out for me. And so I ended up staying there, and Joseph was a drug user. He was an alcoholic. And I think that he was gay or borderline gay or both ways. One way or the other. It was a very unpleasant place to live. He was very rude. You know, he expected me to work and take care of his 4 dogs while he was out of town. I would it was just crazy. I don't need to go into detail with all of that because I'm trying to lead this to make a point. So when I decided, I said, okay, Joseph came back in town. Now, mind you, he had 4 dogs. I would work close to 11-hour days at Popeyes because I was a closer. And so by the time I got home to his place, his dogs had peed all over the place. It was a mess. And so he comes back in town, and I would try my best to clean up as much as I could, along with getting off work between 3:15 and 3:30 in the morning. So I get home 3:30 one night. Joseph is back in town, and he's having a fit because his 4 dogs were not attended to for 9 to 10 hours. Why is that? Because I was at work. I'm trying to make a living here, you know. So he was in there raising hell and talking about, I can't take this. I'm giving you 30 days to leave. Okay. Between Salome and her madness, Kathy, and that situation there, Joseph and his situation there, the moving company that I worked for, I was trying to get my $1,753 out of them, but they went out of business, and I couldn't find these guys anywhere to talk to them to see if there was any way that I can get my money back. I mean, to get my money from them. It was just so much going on. Joseph was being so disrespectful, and he was doing drugs, and he was doing all kind of weird things like knocking on my door at night while I'm in there trying to sleep. Or one time he had company, and I was trying to avoid him. And so due to the fact that I would get off at 3:15 to 3:30 in the morning while everyone was asleep, he had a very quiet washing machine. And so I went downstairs. His guest door was closed. I put my clothes in the washing machine so that I could have a clean uniform. I come back upstairs. He knocks on my door. He said, "Are you cleaning clothes?" And I'm like, "Yeah." You know, he said, "Don't you know I got company?" I'm like, "Yes. I'm trying to clean my uniform." He said, "You don't wash no clothes?" And this was a very quiet washing machine. And I'm like, wow, you serious? What does he do? He goes downstairs. He unplugs the washing machine while my clothes were washing. So I had to humble myself. I had to accept this. I laid down, went to sleep. I woke up early in the morning. I went downstairs. I find out he unplugged the washing machine. His guests saw me doing that, and they said, "Oh, how you doing? How you doing?" I'm like, "I'm fine." Plug the washing machine back in. I go upstairs. Of course, I get through, drying, washing my clothes and drying my clothes. And so, but this happened before he gave me the 30-day notice. So I'm just explaining all of the disrespect that I had to suffer out there in the ATL, this place that a whole lot of y'all hype up. It's just full of a bunch of demons and lowlives. Shady niggas, that's what I say you are. But the whole thing was, all of that was fine until I mentioned to Richard, I'm saying, "You know what, Rich? I've had enough of Atlanta. I've had enough of Atlanta, and I'm just gonna go home. I'm just gonna go home." And Richard was he was going through something very traumatic, because during that time, him and his wife decided to divorce, and so he was going through his thing. So I backed off Richard, because I didn't want to mix my burdens on with his. When it was mentioned that I had made up my mind that I was no longer going to stay, all of a sudden I noticed no more phone calls from Charles. Everyone started acting distant. Because if Brother David is not going to be a brother inside of Jehovah's Witness, because he's in the process of getting out of Atlanta and he's going back home, we have to cut our ties with him. And so I took you through all of that to explain to you that there's always an ulterior motive behind what people do. And I've always felt that Charles did all of these things for me only because in his mind, he's going to eventually become a Jehovah's Witness, and he's going to be up under my wing. And so I noticed the phone calls stopped coming. I know that a lot of people were up under Joseph's influence, because I was telling them about Joseph. He was doing drugs, and I just let them know that's one of the reasons why I've decided I've gone through enough out here in Atlanta. I just felt like, okay, I can't seem to get my feet planted in Atlanta, so obviously the Creator doesn't want me here. I need to go back home to Las Vegas. I need to get back to my sons and get back to my life. And so that's why I left, and I came back here to Las Vegas, because Las Vegas is my home. But my whole thing with this is, these different religious sects, they have their limitations. With all of this divine information that everyone accumulates, you are humane as long as you think that these people are going to eventually jump on board with it. But at the same time, a lot of these religious institutions are not humane whatsoever, because they do certain things with an ulterior motive behind it. And as long as you are doing something with an ulterior motive behind it, then you're not doing it in holiness. You're not doing it in holiness. So what is the point of accumulating all of this information if this is how you view humanity? You know, this person was good as long as I thought that they were going to join on with us, you know. And so everything was fine until I decided to go home. So my point with all of this, even though I dragged you guys through a whole lot of this, the whole thing is, if you're going to be righteous, if you're going to be good for the sake of goodness. If you're going to help someone, help them as a witness of Jehovah, not with the intention on thinking that I'm in the process of recruiting this person to be a Jehovah's Witness as myself. And as soon as I can perceive that that's not going to happen, I'm not calling them no more. See, and this goes on not only in the Jehovah's Witness, this goes on in a whole lot of areas of the religious world. So when it comes to religion, all of this information that you accumulate, it doesn't mean anything if you are not doing good for the sake of goodness. It doesn't mean anything if you don't know how to treat human beings. You should do good for goodness sake, for the sake of goodness. Do it because it's right. Just do it because it's right. And that's what righteousness is. It's being able to go into any area or any sect of people and demonstrate righteousness with them, and not to reject them because they're Muslims, not to reject them because they're Israelites or Jehovah's Witnesses or anything like that. But these different religious sects, you're either going to jump on board with this one or that one. And if this one or that one can't serve ownership to you, they reject you. They reject you. So what is it about these religious institutions that don't like people who have free minds?
Master! It's a scandal for you to eat with these people. Don't you know who they are?
We've lived our lives honorably, made sacrifices to keep the law.
They are thieves, whores, usurers, violent and godless people.
And now you sit and eat with such people who spend their lives in orgies and perversions.
I'm not come to call the virtuous to repentance, but the sinners. And they might enter the kingdom of heaven even before you.
Listen, Master, if you go and eat with these people, they will contaminate you. The whole town will abandon you.
James is right.
James, the heart of the law is mercy.
I just wanted to have a short chat in reference to the subject that I put before this video. I've been dealing with this subject for a while, as a matter of fact. But I get messages, and plus I come out of meditation, and some things come to me. And so I make videos about messages, discussions that I have, things that are shown to me in meditation. Now, my concern of people asserting that they're bored or whatever the case may be, I just tell you, just move on, because you're not going to get anything loud and outrageous and perverted and race related unless it's absolutely necessary. This is not what you're going to get from here. I'm more concerned about humanity putting forth an effort to heal itself. That's my primary concern. As a matter of fact, that's becoming even more my only concern. Because when it all comes to it, humanity healing itself is really all that matters. It's really all that matters. So that's what my concern is, and that's what my content is. So in regards to my encountering with different religious sects, I always told everyone whom I came in contact with that in spite of, as I said before, your belief systems and your religious practices and what you believe, it doesn't mean anything if your attitude is in opposition of what you say you believe based upon moral conduct. It really doesn't matter. It's your actions that matter. It's your treatment of oneself towards other people. And the reason why I say that, it starts with us. So how we treat each other is a reflection of how we are treating ourselves. In reference to the Jehovah's Witness community and a whole lot of different communities that I've come in contact with, it revealed to me that even though a lot of these religious sects reject the implication and the perception that comes from a whole lot of people, accusing them of having this cultistic type grouping, it is indeed a fact. As I said before, when I had made up my mind in Georgia in terms of the Jehovah's Witness community, when I decided that I wasn't going to be remaining in Georgia, all of a sudden, all communication was cut off. In spite of the friendships that developed during the time when many of them thought that he was going to eventually, in time, join the Kingdom Hall. And I understand why they thought as such, because I was enjoying myself, learning of what the Jehovah's Witness community was really about. I saw them very motivated. However, I saw them as being very commercial in terms of the service and the sermons and everything. However, what I noticed about those were very more civil than the Christian church. It wasn't a whole bunch of screaming and falling out, and therefore it wasn't any chaos. It was very peaceful. So therefore it was very enjoyable, and therefore it places you in the position because of the peaceful environment to where you can actually learn not only more things, but you learn more things objectively because of the environment was very peaceful. And so when it all boils down to it, in spite of what religion, what doctrine you follow, what you believe, what you think of in terms of what you believe, in terms of humanity, doing the right thing is all that matters. Doing the right thing is what matters. It's like when I showed you that small footage of the movie Jesus of Nazareth when he was on his way to sup with Matthew, and he was getting ready to sup inside of an environment that was considered contaminated, perverse, and quote unquote worldly. However, he understood that those are the people who need his presence and therefore his message more than anyone. And so he had told his disciples, and they will have an opportunity to go into the kingdom of heaven before you because of their current mentality of condemnation in terms of the people in whom he was getting ready to sit down to supper with. So he had love and he had compassion for that particular status of people, while the disciples had no love for them. They had already condemned them, and therefore they didn't have the will in order to help them, which is demonic. And this is why he told the disciple James that the heart of the law is mercy. You have to have mercy for people, and therefore you have to have compassion for people. You cannot help people if you don't love them, if you don't have any compassion, if you don't have any love, if you don't have any interest in loving people, helping people get where you are. And if you don't have that type of love inside, that type of compassion inside, then where you think you are, you're really not there. Because the message is for everyone. And is it a constitution in terms of message? No, it's not. Is it a doctrine? No, it is not. You know, when he says the kingdom of heaven is within you, it means that there is truth written on your heart, and it's rooted in love and it's rooted in compassion. And therefore, when the scripture said, think not what you are going to say, for it is not you that speak, but the Father that speaketh in you. We are just vessels to be present inside of certain environments, so that when you come into those environments and you observe the people in there and you listen to the people, the Spirit is going to give you the clarity that you need through your perception, given perception at that time, which is divine clarity, so that when you open up your mouth and you speak to these people, it will be divine, and it would be a message of guidance, and it's rooted in love and clarity, and the people will listen to you because of your divine mannerism. But if you look down on the people even before you get there, then you're worser than them because you consider yourself divine. So you cannot limit yourself in terms of who you associate yourself with, because when the Creator puts people before you who are in need of a message, either because of their in error outwardly, or if they just so had happened to been betrayed, like I was betrayed in Georgia by Salam Yuma. I told one of the brothers, after I left and I got here to Las Vegas, I was letting him know that, you know, my time out there in Georgia, in the midst of you Jehovah's Witness brothers, it wasn't just for me, it was for you as well. So don't ever think that as a Christian, as a Jehovah's Witness, or as whatever religious sect that you've given yourself to and become that product, don't ever feel, even if you're not in any religion, but we are all human beings. We are a member of humanity. Every single encounter that is placed before you is ordained by the Creator for you to come in contact with. It's for you too, not only for them. So I told this brother that I was there as a lesson for you guys to see if you were indeed Jehovah's Witnesses, the same as I was put before you as a lesson in terms of myself, to see how I was going to govern myself in the process of learning you guys as Jehovah's Witnesses. And when it had came to the end of my time out there, when it was made known that I was going to come back here, and how everybody just disappeared. You know, Richard had called me one time when I was at work, and you know, he was telling me that you know, I was his friend and everything, and he understood me and everything, because it was a time when we went to this place to eat, and we were all sitting at a bar, which is a place that I don't like bars. I don't like bars. And I felt as though if, you know, you guys are Jehovah's Witnesses, you shouldn't be sitting at bars, because these bars sell alcohol. I felt as though it would have been more setting for Jehovah's Witness to sit at a table instead of a bar. But while we was all sitting at the bar, it was me, Brother Richard, and Brother Charles. Brother Charles was talking to the owner there, telling him that I was a good, you know, cleaner and everything. I'm good at cleaning kitchens. You know, Brother Charles was really trying to look out for me while I was out. You know, he was doing the right thing, but the right thing, his perception was rooted in him thinking that I was going to eventually become a Jehovah's Witness, which, as I said before, wasn't entirely his fault, because I was interested in that. Especially during that time, I needed some type of support system around me, because that was my first time in the South And when I became friends with Brother Richard, and I would listen to Brother Richard talk and how he had explained the scriptures, and he tied in the scriptures based upon what I was currently going through with Salam Yilma. And as I said before, I looked at his lifestyle, I saw his mannerism, I saw his mannerism towards me and his mannerism towards everyone. You know, he was and he still is a good man, you know. And so that's what influenced me to you know, give it a shot. And, you know, and like I said, the people down there at the Kingdom Hall were very good to me. It was even a woman down there who gave me some food and everything, because obviously she was told my condition. You know, when I was being basically starved to death. I was almost starved to death by Salam Yilma. You know, with that being said, I'm just going to throw this in there. I recall one time I was over there talking to Brother Richard. And he looked at me and he said, you know, Dave, when I first met you, you wasn't this slim. He said, I can tell that the whole trial of this has stressed you out tremendously. You know, and I told him, I said, well, I barely eat, you know. And I asked him, I said, would you mind getting me a scale? And he wouldn't. He got a scale. It was a digital scale. And when I came to Georgia, when I walked off the plane, I believe I was like 207 pounds. But that day when I stepped on that scale, I was 171 pounds. I hadn't been 71 pounds since high school. You know, that is how much her evil affected me, you know. But even with all of that, I was still doing the right thing. I was still being kind. I was still being respectable and everything. But as time went on, as I said, at the bar, there was a woman sitting next to me with her friend. And she was trying to get my attention. You know, she kept bumping into me. And so I told Brother Richard, I'm like, you know, I whispered to him, I said, these women out here are a trip. He said, what's going on? I said, this woman keeps bumping into me. You know, it's almost like she's trying to get my attention. And so we got into a conversation. And I think the bartender, which was a woman, and Brother Charles had got into a conversation about cooking, stuff like that, feeding your man and everything. And so I just all of a sudden said, well, I've learned that it's best not to depend upon anyone to feed you. I'm never going to allow anyone to feed me, whether it's my wife, girlfriend, or whatever. I can feed myself. And, you know, I was only speaking that way because of what I was suffering under Salam Yilma. And so the young lady who sat next to me, she said, well, you know, that's a woman's job to feed her man. You know, that's a woman's job to feed her man. And I was just saying, yeah, but I'm responsible for feeding myself. And that's the common black woman. She just kept talking, pushing the issue. And so I started getting irritated because I'm still in a whole lot of pain. You know, I'm still humiliated, I'm in pain, and I'm not trying to hear nothing from no woman right now. And so me and her started going back and forth, and all of a sudden I looked over at Brother Richard and Charles and said, "Are y'all ready to go?" And that shocked them. And so Brother Richard said, come on, let's go. And so Brother Richard was taking me back. This is after I had moved out of Salam's place and I was staying with Kathy. And he was like asking me, he said, "What was that all about?" I said, "Man, I'm hurt. I'm hurt. I'm humiliated. I'm angry." I said, I was trying to tell him what was going on at Kathy's place, because here is Kathy trying to tell me when to eat. You know, she would make me a plate of food and put it on the table downstairs, because I was spending a lot of time upstairs to myself, and she had this thing for me, and obviously she felt like I wasn't paying her enough attention. So she was making my plate and putting it on the table, yelling upstairs, "Mr. David, you need to come down here and eat." And so I was telling Richard that there's this whole control factor going on out here in terms of me. I have one woman trying to starve me, trying to tell me I can't eat. And now I got this woman telling me when to eat. You know, it's crazy, you know. I said, and then you got this woman here at the bar, and she just won't be quiet, and she just keeps running her mouth, and I'm starting to get angry. And I was telling him, and I have to be very careful on how I react out here, because I was in a state of mind that wasn't good. And I knew that the way that I was feeling and the way that I was thinking could have landed me in a Georgia prison. And I wasn't about to go to prison for nobody, especially out there in Georgia. But I was even telling him, I'm saying, I'm even willing to apologize to her if I ever see her again. I said, because she doesn't know what I've suffered. I said, I'm hurting right now, and I don't know what I want to do. I said, I just know that I'm in a lot of pain right now, and I just want to leave. I just want to leave, you know, because everybody, it seems as though, even though everyone knew what was done to me, due to the fact that they were not going through it, their perception of my behavior was rude. And I can understand why they felt like that. But at the same time, you understand that this man is hurting. You know, he gave up everything in his life and he came out here. And so he sat down and he told y'all what he was going through, what happened to him, and how he's feeling. So his reaction should not surprise you if you were indeed paying attention. Now, his reaction may not be justified to you, because actually it's not even justified to him. You know, because I could have handled that better, but at that particular time, I wasn't able to. My hurt and my anger sided with the way that I reacted instead of in opposition of that. And that's what I was trying to, that's what I was explaining to Richard. But when it all boils down to it, I still maintained, at least I thought, a good friendship with everyone out there. And but after I got out of Kathy's place and I was dealing with their brother Joseph and his erotic behavior And I mean, his odd behavior, I don't mean erotic behavior, but his odd behavior, you know, with the drugs, and it was something else. I decided to leave. You know, when I announced that I was going back home, all of a sudden, I was cut off. I was cut off, and therefore I was looked upon as one of the people who the disciples told Yeshua not to be around because he would be contaminated. All of a sudden, I was treated like a leper. That's basically what I'm saying. I went through all of that to get to that point. So, but is that right? Or do you treat people like that simply because of your religious doctrine and the religious policies? You know, oh, those people are of the world, and we are witnesses of Jehovah, or Christians, or Muslims. So you separate yourself from the world when the world is where you're supposed to be present. That's where those are the people who you're supposed to be going to. You're supposed to go to the lost sheep. You're supposed to go to the wounded. You're supposed to go to the people who are hurt and everything. That's doing the right thing. But simply because you're in this religious doctrine, those people are supposedly, by religious policy, be rejected. That's my point. This is the reason why religion, its very definition says, man's search for God, which implies that religion has not yet found God, and yet claim containing the Holy Spirit. Well, if you're still looking and searching for God, it means that you haven't found the fundamentals of the Holy Spirit. And this is why you cut people off so much if you can perceive that they are not going to be a part of that religious circle. So when it all boils down to doing the right thing in spite of your religion is divine behavior. Just do what is right in spite. But a lot of these religions put people in different categories, and these people claim to follow Yeshua's example. You know, another thing, the mistake that I noticed with religion is that Yeshua never told you to worship him. I overheard one of their meetings one time when I was saying with Joseph, you know, one of their video meetings, and they were saying something to the fact of being Jehovah's Witness, and then when we leave, we're all going to be with Jesus. We're all going to be with Jesus. And I'm like, be with Jesus? When I leave this organism, I'm not trying to hang out with no dude. I'm sorry. I'm not. I want to become face to face with the Creator alone, because I have a lot of questions. See, they're talking about their religion. That's the religious mind. When you exit this organism, you go back to everything that possesses power and clarity. that small time that I had died during my motorcycle accident. Even though it wasn't time for myself to transition completely over, I still can't imagine myself looking for a man after I cross over. As much as I love the Creator, and as much as I get angry at the Creator, and as much as I'm curious of what the Creator is, my primary thing once I cross over is I would like to stand before the Creator. The Jesuses, the Moses, all of those men, I'll deal with that later. But I want to come face to face with God itself. That's my objective. Now, as rude as that may sound, I could care less. I could care less. Especially considering as time goes on, people want to say that Jesus never existed and all of that, and Yeshua never existed. That I know is not a fact because of the message that was left behind. To where if you study the man and his mannerism and the message, yeah, he definitely existed. He existed. Because of my study of the man and his message and his mannerisms is one of the reasons why that I'm still crime-free today, drug-free, drink-free, all of those things. I just think that the human family needs to understand the importance of doing the right thing in spite of your religious sect. Just do the right thing. That's all you have to do. And if there's a policy within your religious sect that goes in opposition with you trying to help humanity as a whole, then I would suggest that you just may need to leave that religion, because I don't see no point of accumulating all of this information if you're not going to be a participant in trying to make society a better place to exist. I don't really see a purpose. So with that being said, I'm gonna stop right here because I'm very tired. So everyone have a good night. Stay here. After I left and I got here, to Las Vegas. I was letting him know that, my time out there in Georgia, in the midst of you Jehovah's Witness brothers, it wasn't just for me, it was for you as well. So don't ever think that as a Christian, as a Jehovah's Witness, or as whatever religious sect that you've given yourself to and become that product, don't ever feel, even if you're not in any religion, but we are all human beings, we are a member of humanity. Every single encounter that is placed before you is ordained by the Creator for you to come in contact with. It's for you too, not only for them. So I told this brother that I was there as a lesson for you guys to see if you were indeed Jehovah's Witnesses. The same as I was put before you as a lesson in terms of myself to see how I was going to govern myself in the process of learning you guys as Jehovah's Witnesses. Brother Charles was really trying to look out for me while I was out there. He was doing the right thing, but the right thing, his perception was rooted in him thinking that I was going to eventually become a Jehovah's Witness, which, as I said before, wasn't entirely his fault because I was interested in that. Especially during that time, I needed some type of support system around me because that was my first time in the South. And when I became friends with Brother Richard, and I would listen to Brother Richard talk and how he had explained the scriptures, and he tied in the scriptures based upon what I was currently going through with Salam Yilma. And as I said before, I looked at his lifestyle, I saw his mannerism, I saw his mannerism towards me and his mannerism towards everyone. He still is a good man, And so that's what influenced me to give it a shot. As time went on, as I said, at the bar, there was a woman sitting next to me with her friend. And she was trying to get my attention. She kept bumping into me. And so I told Brother Richard, I'm like, I whispered to him, I said, these women out here are a trip. He said, what's going on? I said, this woman keeps bumping into me. It's almost like she's trying to get my attention. And so we got into a conversation. And I think the bartender, which was a woman, and Brother Charles had got into a conversation about cooking, stuff like that, feeding your man and everything. And so I just all of a sudden said, well, I've learned that it's best not to depend upon anyone to feed you. I'm never going to allow anyone to feed me, whether it's my wife, girlfriend, or whatever. I can feed myself. And, I was only speaking that way because of what I was suffering under Salam Yilma. And so the young lady who sat next to me, she said, well, that's a woman's job to feed her man. That's a woman's job to feed her man. And I was just saying, yeah, but I'm responsible for feeding myself. And that's the common black woman. She just kept talking, pushing the issue. And so I started getting irritated because I'm still in a whole lot of pain. You know, I'm still humiliated, I'm in pain, and I'm not trying to hear nothing from no woman right now. And so me and her started going back and forth, and all of a sudden I looked over at Brother Richard and Charles and said, "Are y'all ready to go?" And that shocked them. And so Brother Richard said, come on, let's go. And so Brother Richard was taking me back. This is after I had moved out of Salam's place and I was staying with Kathy. And he was like asking me, he said, "What was that all about?" I said, "Man, I'm hurt. I'm hurt. I'm humiliated. I'm angry." I said, I was trying to tell him what was going on at Kathy's place, because here is Kathy trying to tell me when to eat. You know, she would make me a plate of food and put it on the table downstairs because I was spending a lot of time upstairs to myself, and she had this thing for me, and obviously she felt like I wasn't paying her enough attention. So she was making my plate and putting it on the table, yelling upstairs, "Mr. David, you need to come down here and eat." And so I was telling Richard that there's this whole control factor going on out here in terms of me. I have one woman trying to starve me, trying to tell me I can't eat. And now I got this woman telling me when to eat. You know, it's crazy, you know. I said, and then you got this woman here at the bar and she just won't be quiet and she just keeps running her mouth, and I'm starting to get angry. And I was telling him, and I have to be very careful on how I react out here, because I was in a state of mind that wasn't good. And I knew that the way that I was feeling and the way that I was thinking could have landed me in a Georgia prison. And I wasn't about to go to prison for nobody, especially out there in Georgia. But I was even telling him, I'm saying, I'm even willing to apologize to her if I ever see her again. I said, because she doesn't know what I've suffered. I said, I'm hurting right now, and I don't know what I want to do. I said, I just know that I'm in a lot of pain right now, and I just want to leave. I just want to leave, because everybody, it seems as though, even though everyone knew what was done to me, due to the fact that they were not going through it, their perception of my behavior was rude. And I could understand why they felt it. But at the same time, you understand that this man is hurt. You know, he gave up everything in his life and he came out here. And so he sat down and he told y'all what he was going through, what happened to him, and how he's feeling. So his reaction should not surprise you if you were indeed paying attention. Now, his reaction may not be justified to you, because actually it's not even justified to him. You know, because I could have handled that better, but at that particular time, I wasn't able to. My hurt and my anger sided with the way that I reacted instead of in opposition of that. That's what I was trying to, that's what I was explaining to Richard. as what was aggressively asserted of Yeshua to the church, this is what's going on this present moment right now in the world today. You know, when he had mentioned you bow before the letter of the law, but you violate the heart of the law. That's what's going on today. You know, there's a whole lot of people who are so into the word biblical, you know, the biblical words, but as soon as they come out of the book, they violate the heart of the law, and therefore they violate the principles of divinity in accordance to how they treat one another, even within the church community and in the religious community, and therefore even in the world. This is what's going on today, as it has been going on for centuries. Because obviously, back when he had brought this to their attention, obviously the church didn't resolve themselves in terms of that. Because even after that, they worked along with the Roman government, and they had him crucified, even though a whole lot of believers said that it was a part of prophecy. When to me, it was just a religious and political assassination of a man who spoke truth. You see that going on today. As I mentioned in my times in Georgia, you know, I was around a whole lot of people who understood the word biblically, you know, but there was very few who struggled to try to do exactly what was in their hearts to do. However, there was a whole lot of wicked influences who were more so biblical, who forced and influenced them to compromise what was in their hearts towards me. And this is another reason why, or I would say the primary reason why, all of the people who I felt as though I grew close friendship with, cut it all off. So what was in their hearts, what they wanted to continue, that was in their hearts, that was compromised by people who were more biblical than moral. That's what's going on in the world today, in a whole lot of different areas. But as you move forward, you try to grow internally, and you try to understand what the Creator gives you, even outside the biblical, you know, because even Yeshua had said that in time, the Spirit of truth is going to come and it's going to guide you to all truth. So that right there is telling you that the facts are not in the books. It's not in religion. It's not in the church. It's inside of the human being. As he once said, the kingdom of heaven is within you, the heart of the human being. It's in the heart of the human being. And as I said before, the very definition of religion implies that God is not present in religion, because the definition of religion is man's search for God. But everyone tries to, what I've noticed, try to design the definition of their religion away from the primary definition of religion. They try to say being a Muslim is one who submits his will to do the will of God. You know, but with my experience in the Muslim community, I didn't meet anyone who fulfilled that definition. But what it all boils down to, and this is going to be a very short video, very short, but when it comes to righteousness righteousness has no meaning and it has no revealing factor simply by studying the scriptures and memorizing the scriptures and articulating the scriptures in terms of where this scripture relates to this certain living condition. It has everything to do with how you treat other human beings. And that's basically principle of action, like I speak of all the time. And principles of action, divine principles of action, covers every area of divine living, whether it's religion, whether it's being a father or a mother, or a brother or a sister, or even an auntie or a cousin. Everything is about how you treat other human beings, and it reveals of how ones treat themselves, because you have to first mistreat yourself in terms of compromising your moral status in order to decide to mistreat others. You have to first mistreat oneself. So it's always going to start with us. It's never going to be this institutional thing that a whole lot of people claim is the right way to go. Well, if this person is not going to join the Nation of Islam, then we're not going to talk to him anymore. Or if this person decides to where he's not going to come on board with us as Jehovah's Witnesses, then we need to cut our ties. And then you wonder why the majority of the world look at different religions as cults, because that's exactly what you are. With that thinking process, that's exactly what you are. I don't care what you say you are. What you do reveals who and what you are. As he said, you bow to the letter of the law, but you violate the heart of the law. Justice, mercy, good faith. That's what it's about. And unless you know how to treat other human beings, what you say you believe, what you say you are based upon what you believe, doesn't mean anything. And when it comes to each of us as human beings, a part of this human family, the best way that we can make one another better examples, we have to first become better examples unto ourselves. What I've come to notice during this whole life journey, we spend so much time pointing the finger at other people. And as a lot of the elders used to tell us, while you're pointing one finger at someone else, it's three fingers pointing back at you. The best persuasion will always be by way of example. For me to persuade you to do better, I first have to be doing better. You have to observe David and say, wow, okay, he's a good example for me, and vice versa. I've come in contact with a whole lot of people who were very good examples for me. And I've been good examples for other people. And in this exchange of the demonstration of being good examples, this is how we help one another become better human beings. We have to have good examples. What's going on in the world this day, especially in the quote unquote black community, we have too many, you might as well say subhuman beings who have lost their humanity. And in the process, we have these people being made rich and being put into the positions to freely promote this immorality in the world. And this is affecting our youth as well as our adults nowadays, to where this hip-hop poison is going on. You have pastors who are totally corrupt, and we have these shows, these shows that we watch every week, to where they are promoting criminals as heroes. And the way that these people, these characters are developed, they're killers, they're drug dealers, they're people who live their lives as tools of corruption. However, the way that these shows are written and how they're promoted, you find yourself never wanting these people who are totally corrupt to get caught and imprisoned, when all at the same time, this criminal behavior is being promoted as heroes. And people who are trying to clean the streets up, whether they're police officers or people in other areas of trying to perform themselves to try to make a world a better place, those people are promoted as either snitches, Uncle Toms, or coons, and all of these titles that pretty much attack people who are totally against the immorality of the world. So it's like you have a lot of shows out here now, like Power and all these other shows that are promoting people of criminal behavior and criminal lifestyles as heroes. And you find yourself falling in love with these images that are based upon reality. And you find yourself rooting for them without really paying attention of how what you are looking at and therefore feeding on is forcing you or poisoning you to compromise your moral principles in terms of what is right and what is wrong. So the word does speak on as time goes on in a world. What used to be considered wrong is going to be considered right, and vice versa. And so we are going to have to understand of how what we observe visually, mentally, and intellectually, that's equivalent to eating. You're consuming all of these things and you're bringing these things on the inside. And there's not good eating. I mean, the same as you eat some food that is not good for you, it's going to make your organism sick. The same as observing certain shows and listening to certain music is going to produce a mind that is contaminated. And sooner or later it's going to filter into a doctrine and a way of thinking, and therefore a principle of action. You're going to start acting out these things because this is what your mind is feeding on consistently. So this is what's going on in this world today. And if you're not very observant and careful of oneself, you're going to find yourself not seeing any wrong in what is wrong. And you're going to become blind of not seeing any right in what is right. So we have to be careful. We have to be careful in a whole lot of ways. So basically, the greatest persuasion will forever be example. And we have a whole lot of examples out here being put before us that are not really good examples, but they're being propagated and created as good examples, and they're being put into shows, and they're filtered through this world of entertainment. But if you're not very careful on how you are being affected by what you're eating intellectually, by way of your visual observation, you're going to find yourself compromising your moral standards and the way that you're perceiving things, and the way that you are allowing these certain levels of perception to affect your thinking process. You're going to find yourself compromising your moral standards. So you have to be careful with that. So the best persuasion will always be example. And so not everything should be looked up to as an example of how to be. So we just have to be very careful.